Hello, my fellow noobs and newbies to the channel. I've had a lot of time to think a lot lately, and I realized that I've not shared much about my plans or the actions that I'm taking to eventually become a mangaka, except for some small information here and there. And while this video is not about that, I thought that I might share with you what that looks like as of now, and my hope is that if you're planning to become a mangaka in the near future, that you can learn from my experience as well. And if you haven't seen my other videos, I'm on a journey to become a pro mangaka with a clear plan to hone the skills necessary to get there. At the moment, and to some extent, I'm able to draw characters, backgrounds, and of course, have a story to tell. My plan consists of dedicating 6 weeks of studying one subject for the rest of the year, including perspective, objects, creatures, composition, storyboarding, style creation, and coloring. And I've finished my studies with perspective and objects as of now, and I'm beginning to study creatures. Since I haven't really shared with you much of my manga story, if not anything at all, I thought I'd give you a couple of breadcrumbs within this video in relation to my story, and in further videos on, I'm gonna add a little bit of more breadcrumbs here and there so that way you can kind of get a glimpse of the future and what I plan to publish. But my story is going to be with elements of horror, action, and drama, of course, and this is set to be in a post-apocalyptic setting where there are certain creatures that pose as a threat to the main characters of the story. And I want the creatures to be unique, and of course there is a large saturation of creatures within manga. They play a very big role in it, and I want my creatures to be unique and interesting and also play a role or bigger role within the story as well. And it is for this reason that I've decided to start my creature studies by knowing the anatomy of animals, because the anatomy of animals are the basic foundation of creature creation, and it allows us to infuse the anatomy of animals with our imagination. And because creatures are a more important role in my story, I want my creatures to be as believable as possible, with a little mix of imagination, of course, and basically show monsters that otherwise you may not see in other stories. What better way to reflect on good examples of creature creation than with current works of anime and manga? For example, I believe creatures that are done right in anime and manga are good design work like Hollows in Bleach, Titans in Attack on Titan, and Yomas within Claymore. And where I believe creatures are done wrong is when they look too different but have the same title. In my opinion, it makes me feel like the creatures should have different names. For example, we associate fishes with aquatic, lizards are scaly, birds have feathers, so the name we choose for a monster should be easily identifiable or have the same style. You don't want to lump in a giraffe-looking creature and a gecko-looking creature and both name them Cuddles. I don't know. That's a weird name for a creature, but you get what I mean. And one other thing that we should think about when creating creatures for our manga is whether or not they should be a threat or not. And my personal opinion is that if you're going to create creatures, you should have them remain a threat in the story and not just be disposable foot soldiers. Kind of like when games just spam the same enemy in large quantities to quote unquote make things harder. It just kind of seems a little bit cheesy, just kind of easy way to make things harder. So it just kind of comes off flat. And for example, or a good example that is, Yomas are kind of like foot soldiers in the story Claymore, but there is a hierarchy to Yomas in the story. For example, they have abyssal ones, awakened beings, and the list kind of goes on and on. But the more stronger ones are the awakened beings and other types of creatures. And whenever the characters do encounter these more advanced forms of yomas, you do feel a sense of danger or intrigue because you're not sure what's going to happen next. Similarly, in Attack on Titan, Titans are scary because you're not sure what they will do next. Their personalities are random, some are aggressive, others are sluggish or don't do anything. And so these random traits keep the readers guessing. And with Bleach, they have the Arankars, they have the Vastal Lords, the Hollows, Gillians, and all these different types of Hollows. And you can see that the interactions from the characters and these creatures are going to be different each time. And that's what keeps the story interesting. And if you ask me about my creatures and my story, I do want them to be menacing. I do want them to always feel like there's going to be a sense of danger whenever they're around, because obviously they're going to take up a lot of space in the story, and they should obviously be a threat whenever they are encountered, just like when the Survey Corps approaches the Titans, or whenever the Claymores approach the Yomas and other types of Claymores as well. So that's kind of the goal that I want to achieve with my creatures. So what do you think of monsters in manga? Do you think they should just be a plot device to introduce the reader to the world and the story, or should they play a more pivotal role? What do you think a monster's purpose is in a manga? And now to answer the bigger question of this video is why I started drawing animal skeletons as a starting point for creature creation. And my firm belief is that knowing how creatures with different skeletal structures react in different environments allows me to understand what they will do in those specific areas. Like, for example, if a creature that walks on all fours, how are they going to move in water? How are they going to move in a forest or in a building, in a city, etc. Another great thing for me to understand, or what I believe is important to understand, is creatures themselves, like creatures who swim versus creatures who walk and who fly, etc. And knowing those basic fundamentals allows me to use my imagination to infuse them to create interesting creatures. Like if I wanted to create a walking land squid or a flying slug, those are really interesting creatures that could be implemented in a story. And lastly, I think that understanding these principles of animal anatomy can help me create otherworldly beings or horrors that you may not want to encounter in real life. But feel free to drop me a comment and let me know what thoughts on monsters you have, what has helped you to create your creatures, and if you are a pro artist, please feel free to leave any tips for any aspiring mangaka in the noob community below. But until then, noobs and newbies, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you all on the next one.